Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to Late Night Learning. I am your host, Dr. Anthony Palomba. Now, in the previous episode, we talked about qualitative research methods. We talked about focus groups, finding themes, why qualitative research is useful in the entertainment industry. Today, we're going to look at quantitative research. Quantitative research is numerical. That is where quantitative is, or quantity as a prefix here. Now, quantitative research can mean a whole host of things. Today we're primarily going to be focusing on survey. But as you can see here, quantitative research covers a whole gamut of research methods. This includes survey, probably something you're most familiar with on this list, attitudes and beliefs of participants. On a scale of 1 to 5, what do you think of this product? On a scale of 1 to 5, what do you think of this service? Moving along, with experiment, we're also thinking about introducing a stimuli or manipulating a question. This may mean that you may be a participant in an experiment, and so some people might watch commercial A for Gap clothing, and then some people might watch commercial B for Gap clothing, and then some people may not watch any commercial at all. That is the control group. And so the goal there is to see how effective are the commercials in manipulating consumers' perceptions about Gap clothing. If we look back at the slide, the final thing that we have is content analysis. So content analysis might look at something like clips of Star Trek, or perhaps clips of The Office, or perhaps newspaper clippings from the New York Times. In a content analysis study, what we are analyzing is content. We're looking at video, audio, words, and texts, trying to distill certain themes that might be produced. And so in this particular lecture, we're only going to focus on survey. It allows us to do a deep dive, and more often than not, if you're doing research work, you're more likely to do a survey. I say this because experiments, though incredibly useful, are incredibly time-consuming. The same can be said for content analysis as well. And so many scholars may defer to survey work because of its rapid data collection ability. And so let's move right along. So levels of measurement. And so we are not measuring salt, we are not measuring spices today, unfortunately. Something a little more dry. Nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio. I know. I promise this is going to be entertaining and it will not be as painful as it might seem on the front. So let's go to the next slide. Surrounding nominal. Yes. And so nominal measurement looks at items as categories. And so if you've thought about, maybe the last time you've taken a survey, you probably filled out demographic information. And so this may include questions about gender and ethnicity and employer. Numbers are assigned to demarcate differences here. And so you might look at a question and it might ask what your sex is, and you might, demarcate male or female. But if male is 1 on the survey and females are 2 on the survey, it does not mean that females are better than males, even though some of you may disagree with me on that. And you can look further down on the slide, you'll see what is your race. Once again, Caucasian 1, African American 2, Asian American 3. Just because numbers are assigned to these categories, it does not invoke or summon any kind of numerical equity here. There's no value behind these numbers. And so nominal data is useful, but as you can imagine, there's very little that we can do with it from an analysis standpoint, although it is very, very useful and necessary to collect. We ratchet up just one more level when we get to ordinal. If we look at the next slide, you can see here that we're looking at attributes that are ranked. So you may have a question about your favorite TV shows. What are your favorite TV shows? So you might say to yourself, well, out of a list, if a survey has given me a list, that includes Modern Family, Big Bang Theory, Blackish, and Off the Boat, I might wind up ranking Modern Family ahead of Big Bang Theory. Maybe I'm putting Blackish at a higher rank above Off the Boat. What this means is that Modern Family, I believe, is a better show than Big Bang Theory. There's a problem here. I haven't given it a numerical ranking. I know that I like Modern Family more than Big Bang Theory. But for researchers, it really doesn't allow us to have some sort of numerical value there. It's great that you might like Hillary Clinton more than Bernie Sanders or more than Donald Trump, but we don't know by how much conceptually. And so when this shows up in a data collection spreadsheet file, we kind of have an issue there. Yeah, we kind of get some sense of ranking and what means more to some people than others. But there's not much more we can do with it. We don't get really excited until we get to the next level of data collection, or of measurement in this case, and that is interval. Interval measurements are crucial here, and it's mainly the space in which a lot of researchers like to be in, if we can, of course. Let me place a qualifying statement here now. You never want to manipulate data too much. In other words, if in fact you are measuring gender and it is male and female, you don't want to put it on a scale of 1 to 5. You don't want to mess with categories like that. But as best as you can, it is always useful to have interval scaled survey questions. And so here, literally, we are looking at vegetables. There might be some fruits in there, and we have a scale. That's purposely why I chose this photo. An interval measurement considers the distance between answer choices. So it may include something like weight and height, or it might include a scale. So on a Likert scale, on a scale of 1 to 5, how do you feel about Modern Family? On a scale of 1 to 5, how many times do you think you'll view another episode of Mad Men or of The Voice on NBC? And so these questions really allow us to get a sense of how people feel about things. People can evaluate their brand loyalty. Scale of 1 to 5, how loyal are you to Starbucks? People can put down their brand equity. And so they might say to themselves, on a scale of 1 to 5, what is the value? How valuable do you think the Nintendo brand is? Or your perceptions of the Nintendo brand? And so for all of these questions, we're really able to get a sense of how consumers think about things. Now, granted, studies have demonstrated that humans are awful at recollection. Out of anything else that we do, our memories are pretty bad. And so survey questions oftentimes have to take that into consideration. As you might imagine from that statement, surveys aren't always the best way to measure human behavior. And so for a lot of entertainment companies now, apps have been pushed. Yes, that's why NBC wants you to sign up for an app. That's why Netflix wants you to sign up for an app. Yes, that's why MoviePass wants you to sign up for an app, if it's still in business at the time of this airing. All of these companies are looking to collect data. And while a survey is good and it gives us numerical data and allows for generalizability being that we can take a sample from a population, learn a few things about that sample, and then generalize it to the population, as long as it's a randomized sample. From that, we can learn and generalize a lot. But it's really good to have real-time data. And so Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Go, all of these products and services in the entertainment and technology industries really afford us the opportunity to get real-time data. Consumers may not really know how much television they watch, or be mindful of certain shows, or want to put down certain shows for that matter. Studies have shown that people are more inclined to put down that they watch PBS than the Jersey Shore for that matter. And so when we think about getting honest to God data from people, it can get a little hairy sometimes. And so that's why with apps and with other streaming services that we have, at least in the media and entertainment industries, it's a really exciting time to be a part of data collection. Moving along to the next slide here, ratio. This is the level of measurement with an absolute 0. Unless you are in chemistry or biology, you're probably never going to be measuring things on a ratio level. And so for the social sciences, we really don't get toward that level of measurement. And so here it's possible to have 0. Typically, you won't see that on a survey questionnaire in the social sciences. Granted, there are always exceptions here. Let's move to the next slide. So, for survey design relies on scales. It does rely on questions and statements. Sometimes a survey question might say, on a scale of 1 to 5, please evaluate the following statements. I look forward to seeing my favorite TV character on tonight. I can't wait to see my TV character in the next season of a particular TV series. These are statements that we'll evaluate. And so with a survey, it's not always about questions, it's also about evaluating the distance between a statement and our level of agreement with that statement or level of resonation. And so the other piece of any kind of survey statement or survey question is, what's the Likert scale? Now, I said to you before, on a scale of 1 to 5, it's probably what we're most comfortable with. It's what we're most used to. But we do have survey statements and questions that sometimes ask us on a scale of 1 to 3 or on a scale of 1 to 7. Is that useful? Is a 1 to 3 really useful? What about a 1 to 7? Why do people typically prefer a 1 to 5? For a few reasons. For one thing, on a scale of 1 to 3, you don't have a lot of variation, right? People either pick 1, which is low, 2 is medium, 3 is high. But people tend to be a little bit more sophisticated than that. And as you can imagine, it really doesn't tell us much about the variation or the different answers from consumers by just giving people a scale of 1 to 3. Very little we can do with. That's fair. But what about the scale of 1 to 7? Certainly, if we have more numbers on a scale, maybe we can measure more. Not quite the case. What typically happens here is that with a scale of 1 to 7, people really don't know how to answer the statements or the questions, or rate them for that matter. And so what winds up happening is you might have a lot of people answering 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They might skip 6, and then a lot of people on 7. Or you might have other data inconsistencies. Additionally, you'd have to recruit a lot of people to make every answer choice meaningful on the scale. In other words, if you had a sample of 100 people, and let's say everybody equally picked a number, 100 divided by 7 is about 15 to 16 respondents per scaled answer. Not much we can do there when we're looking at data analysis. And so we can have variation spread too thin, and then we have really big problems. Not really. It's something that you can fix in a statistical package, which I will not talk about here because you'll immediately shut off this video. And so the best thing that we can do here is really serve on a scale of 1 to 5. It's intuitive, it's easy. 1 is low, 2 is somewhat low, 3 is medium, 4 is somewhat high, 5 is highest. It makes sense to people, and it's something that a lot of people are familiar with. Let's keep going. Clarity in questions. And so when we're designing a survey, it's not enough just to put questions and statements together. We got to think about what we're asking and how we're asking it. And so here I have one question. How many soft drinks did you consume yesterday? If we put this on a survey, is it misleading? Does everybody know what a soft drink is? Might some people think iced tea is a soft drink? Well, that's an issue, because if we have iced tea drinkers and we have soda drinkers, people are going to have different perceptions about this question, and we might not be measuring what we think we're measuring. If we go to the bottom, it's a fixed question here. How many cans of soda did you drink from yesterday morning to yesterday at night? I still don't love the question, but it is fixed. It's a little bit more specific here. Additionally, I don't know what a drink is from a quantitative standpoint. 8 ounces, 12 ounces, 18 ounces. At least at the bottom, I've asked about cans of soda. A can is something people can visualize, and so they're more appropriate for answering. The question itself is more appropriate for answering. Let's move forward. Another kind of question to be mindful of here is double barrel questions. And so a double barrel question is a question that really has too much going on here. And so for this question, how often do you rent boating equipment and go boating? What's wrong here? You're right. What's wrong here is that I'm asking about how often people rent boating equipment and go boating. Now, some of you might say, well, what's the big deal there? If you're going to rent a boating equipment, you're probably going to go boating, but you may or may not. Is it possible that you might rent boating equipment for your cousin who goes boating all the time? It might seem a little far-fetched, but these are things that we have to think about when we're designing survey questions. A double barrel statement is not something that you want. Make sure you're either asking about renting boating equipment or going boating. That's primarily the best way to fix a double barrel question. Split the questions up. If the survey is too long, you might have to cut one of the questions or maybe think of a different way to ask the question. Or you can always have an open question at the end of the survey if it's really something you want to learn a little bit more about. Let's go to the next slide. Answers to survey questions. You must have mutual exclusivity. They must be mutually exclusive. What does that mean? Well, if we look at this question, is there an issue here? In which category does your age in whole years fall between? 0 to 5 years, 5 to 10, 10 to 15, 15 to 20. Is there an issue here? There sure is. As you can see with answer 1 and answer 2, 5 years is in both statements. That's the same for 5 to 10 and 10 to 15 and 15 to 20. We can see that the numbers 5, 10, and 15 are in 2 answer choices. This isn't good. If you're 5 years old, or if you're 10 years old, or if you're 15 years old, what answer do you pick? That's not good. You want to make sure that your statements have no overlap whatsoever. We are avoiding overlap here. And so the way to fix that simply is you can say 0 to 4, 5 to 9, 10 to 14, and so on and so forth. The key here is that you don't want the statements that people can answer on to have any kind of overlap. It'll confuse consumers, they'll take your survey less seriously, and you're going to have data collection issues as well as data analysis issues moving forward. Let's look at the next slide. Answers to survey questions. They must be exhaustive as well here. So, for instance, what we have here is a Roy G. Biv scale. For those of you who may remember biology, all of the colors that are out there in the rainbow. What is your favorite color from the Roy G. Biv scale? Answer choices include red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and indigo. What am I missing? I'm missing violet, of course, the last color. You want to be sure that you have all possible answer choices here when you are designing a survey. Now, this might mean putting other at the end of a survey question, and some people might think that that's lazy. I actually think it's quite good. It saves your behind because even if you haven't considered all answers that consumers might want to select, they can always put it down. Additionally, it allows you to replicate your survey more easily if you haven't had an opportunity to update statements or questions or other things for that matter. Finally, what you can also do with an exhaustive list of answers for a question is have somebody else look at it. It's always good to have people look at your survey questions, just kind of as a side note. It's always good to have a fresh pair of eyes. I myself have people look at my survey. I pre-test my surveys, so I'm always having consumers or participants giving me feedback on the survey. I actually have, at the end of my survey, kind of an open answer. So if I'm pre-testing a survey, there's an open answer section at the end of the survey. I ask people, what's wrong with the survey? Did you find anything confusing? Was there something that you liked, that you didn't like? And I have to take everything into consideration for the final dissemination or the final send out of the survey. This is really, really good because you're able to see how people answer certain questions, you're able to see how people answer certain statements, and you get to figure out, well, do we need this question? Maybe we don't, because everybody seems to love Modern Family. We're not really learning a lot about this particular show. Maybe there's something else we can ask people that might be more useful. Additionally, if you can pre-test your survey, and by pre-test I mean have other people take the survey before it's finalized, quote unquote, you're also able to get a sense of how long it takes people to complete the survey. This is pretty big because maturation and people kind of dropping out of completing the survey is something that all researchers face. And you always want people to be able to get through your survey. And so as much as you can, be mindful of time, be mindful of the manner in which people are answering and completing your survey. Let's keep going. How to stimulate recall among participants. So as I said earlier, participants aren't necessarily good at recollection. So you may have to ask several questions about an event or use associations. So for instance, I've asked people in the past, and they're kind of known as unaided awareness questions, what TV shows come to mind when you think of guilty pleasure? What TV shows come to mind when you think of comedy? What TV networks come to mind when you think of sports? You can ask people these questions, and it really helps them stimulate recall. Additionally, it allows them to start thinking about the topic. If I'm interested in asking people about guilty pleasure television, for instance, I'm not going to start off by asking them, what do you think of Bravo's stable of guilty pleasure TV programming? That's way too soon. You kind of want to walk people into the main threshold of your survey very carefully. Always start with general questions in the beginning of a survey. I think that you should start thinking about conceptual questions in the beginning. What's a guilty pleasure for you? Or what sports do you typically like to watch on a Saturday? And then you can start asking them about Fox Sports 1 or ESPN or Michael Kay or Colin Cowherd or Stephen A. Smith or anything else that's super, super detailed and fixed upon the sports industry. When you do these things, you're really able to guide your consumers or participants, however you'd like to call them, by the hand. And it's crucial that you do so. If your survey doesn't have a flow, it will kind of rock the boat a little bit for participants. They might kind of say to themselves, that question was kind of out of left field, or I'm not really sure what this guy is getting at, or now I know what this guy is getting at. You also don't want people to think that there's any kind of socially desirable answer that you're looking for here as well. So if you go from general right down to specific, it's really going to aid you in effectively disseminating a survey and collecting really, really good data for your own data analyses. Let's keep going. Assumptions. So assumptions are also something you want to be careful of here. And we kind of alluded to this earlier. So on the days in which you drink alcohol, how many drinks do you usually have? What's wrong with this question? Well, for one thing, I'm assuming quite a bit here. For one thing, I'm assuming that people, everybody really, who takes my survey drinks. I'm assuming that they drink multiple times, and I'm assuming that they're going to be divulging all of this to me as well. And it's not really a comfortable way in which I've asked them. And so to kind of fix this question, you could ask how much, do you consume alcohol? If so, how many glasses do you consume? Or you could be more specific with wine or more specific with beer. Or you could create a question in which you're taking stock of beer, wine, cocktails, mixed drinks, and then maybe ask people how many drinks they think they have per week. And maybe that's Monday to Sunday. Maybe that's the week that you're interested in. Or maybe you're interested in weeknights. Or maybe you're interested in weekends. And so the more specific your questions can be, just kind of as an overall rule, it's really going to help you with your survey. You're really going to be measuring, once again, what you think you're measuring, which is crucial to achieve during survey design and in data collection. That's all we have today for Late Night Learning. As always, keep laughing and keep learning.